Good morning and welcome to the January 9th Sunday service of the Unitarian Universalist Church of St. Petersburg. My name is Ben Atherton-Zeman. I'm the minister here. I am excited to bring you today's worship service along with today's worship associate, Beth Stombaugh.
Thanks, Reverend Ben. We are a people of many beliefs, but we share a common faith that what we do in this world matters, and that we are connected to one another and to our planet. Whoever you are, wherever you are in your journey, you are welcome here. I want to give a special welcome to any newcomers. If you want a church where disability rights are human rights, where science is believed, and where no human being is illegal, I have good news. You may have found your church home here. Now we have some announcements. I'd just like to ask all of you to please fill out your FMP surveys. The survey ends at 4 p.m. on January 12th, and we don't have, we only at last count had about 30 to 35 completed surveys. So please get your surveys filled out so that we can listen to you and hear what you have to say about what projects you'd like done in the coming months and years. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth. I know you worked hard on that along with the team. Another announcement we have is, no surprise, COVID. I guess yesterday we were at 164 positive tests per 100,000 in Ellis County. That's higher than it's ever been. even during the height of the pandemic. So your board and your safety team urges you to remain safe. We will continue doing live stream services like this one. We, however, still are encouraging small groups to continue to meet outdoors and socially distanced. For the joys, sorrows, and concerns, submit them to me during the week. Write them at minister@uustpete.org or put them in the text chat now. Clearly mark joy, sorrow, or concerns, and then Kelly can read it out loud. There will be no virtual coffee hour today because we're having a special town hall meeting as previously announced, and that information will also be in the text chat. Thank you, Kelly, at the end of the worship service. Our legacy building matching campaign ends February 1st, so this is great. For each person who signs up to give a future gift to our endowment, there's an anonymous donor who's going to give $500 right now. So that's even a percentage of your retirement account. You can name UUSP as one of your life insurance beneficiaries, and we will get $500 in spending money. Hopefully you've read the article and all the other articles in this week's newsletter. Please contact Kathleen Reel or Barbara Archibald for more information. The Martin Luther King Jr. parade is next Monday, not tomorrow, but in a week, January 17th. See the newsletter for details, and I'm looking forward to this. I hope to see you there. Religious education is also suspended until we can get back in person, and I just want to thank all of you who volunteered for RE, and we hope to take you up on your volunteer offers soon. And big thanks, of course, to Janae Johnson, who coordinates our religious education.
Speaking of RE, Janae Johnson is back from a well-deserved vacation and is doing today's time for all ages. John Arterton and James Mack are providing music, along with our returning piano player, Aaron Cassette. Kelly Olson is live streaming on YouTube, and our greeters today are Jamie Gray and Aaliyah Cannon. Now let us take a moment to center ourselves for worship. Our flaming chalice is a symbol of Unitarian Universalism. It is a symbol of hope, the sacred, the quest for truth, the warmth of community, the light of reason, and so much more. When Ben lights our chalice, I invite you to say our covenant out loud. The words can be found in the text chat. Please follow along with the new hand movements. Love is the spirit of this church, and service its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we trust the wisdom in each of us, every color, every creed and kind, and we see our faces in each other's eyes, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in our holy place, when we share the silence of sacred space, and the God of our heart stirs within, and we feel the power of each heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace, when our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place.
Thank you, John, for that wonderful music. The reading today is a poem called Listen to Me by an anonymous author. Listen to me. Listen to me, please. I need to talk to you. Give me only a few minutes. Accept what I experience, what I feel, without reserve, without judgment. Listen to me, please. I need to talk. Do not bombard me with questions, advice, and opinions. Do not feel obliged to settle my difficulties. Could it be that you lack confidence in my competence? Listen to me, please. I need to talk. Do not try to entertain or amuse me. It would make me think you fail to understand the importance of what I'm going through. Listen to me, please. I need to talk. Do not feel that it is your duty to approve. If I need to tell my story, it is simply to be set free. Listen to me, please. I need to talk. Do not interpret and try not to analyze. I could feel misunderstood and manipulated and could no longer tell you anything. Listen to me, please. I need to talk. Do not interrupt me to question. Do not attempt to force me to reveal what is hidden. I know how far I can and will go. Listen to me, please. I need to talk. Respect the silences which help me to make progress. Be very careful not to break them. It is very often through them that things are clarified. So now that you have let me have my say, I beg you, now you may speak. Attentive and at your disposal, I, in my turn, will listen to you. After trying to look for a reading or a poem for today's sermon, this poem really resonated with me, and I realized that I needed to become a better listener myself. I saw myself in the poem where I tend to analyze people and give my opinions, and also after being a teacher for 24 years in elementary school, I am and was still definitely a fixer. I tend to solve and settle problems and to fix problems instead of just being a good, active listener. And I realize now that many people, they just need to tell their story and to process through what they're saying, and that I don't always need to be a fixer. So in the new year, I plan to not be so much of a fixer, but to be a better listener.
Thank you, Beth. Now it's the time in our worship service for the joys, sorrows, and concerns. And thank you, James, for bringing the microphone to Kelly as she reads them off of the text chat. Again, if you have a joy, a sorrow, or a concern during the week, please write me an email, minister@uustpete.org. And I will read it aloud. I have none that were submitted to me this week, so we will only have the ones that were submitted via text chat. You still have a minute to do that. If any of you would prefer your joy, sorrow, or concern remain off YouTube, please let me know that when you submit it.
I'm Ann Price, and
1 second, we gotta make the microphone hot. It's not just Kelly who will be sharing. One person here in person who's going to share her joy. Unless the microphone doesn't work, in which case, we will get together. Thank you, James. Unless it's muted on. There we go. We have many moving parts in this worship service. Thank you, everyone.
Okay. I'm Mack and I wish this church were full of people today because I have Huntington's disease and I choke a lot and I choke on food daily. And I looked online and the Mayo Clinic says the number one thing to do is get it out of your throat. Don't ever drink water. People think drinking water is the solution. It's not, because your airway is blocked. And so as many people as you can share this with, the better anyway. So you have to get it out, and if you are alone, you can lay all gently against the chair for a Heimlich method. Yeah.
Thank you.
We have a joy from Edna. She starts her new job tomorrow. Yay, Edna! And then we have a sorrow from John. Sorry to hear the passing of Sidney Poitier, a great actor but also a wonderful activist, always striving to better our world.
And we place a final stone for those joys and concerns that remain in our hearts, perhaps too tender to be spoken out loud. And let us take a moment of silence together. The mystery is that we are connected, even when we feel apart. Let us rejoice in our beloved community, which makes of the many one. So may it be.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea. Move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots only grows, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
Good morning. My name is Janae Johnson, and I'm your Religious Education and Communications Coordinator here at UU St. Pete. So, I have a couple fun facts because I like to do that. I'm here to share the story of all ages. Fun fact. Now, if we took a picture of both of our ears and place them side by side, it would look like a heart. Another fun fact about the word heart is that the word ear sits right in the center of it. To truly listen is to hear the intent of listening with your heart. We have active listening, which is the listening. We have sympathetic listening, which sounds like it's really tough. We have therapeutic listening, which sounds like, tell me more about it. Those are some simplified responses that have their place, but in all honesty, there are other ways to listen. We also have false listening when we pretend to listen, where we are sidetracked and swamped thinking about our response. Then there's also judgmental listening, where we listen to evaluate, maybe criticize, or otherwise pass judgment on what someone says. There's also reflective listening, where we repeat what the speaker is saying to make sure we're hearing them correctly. Most of the time, no matter how we may intend to listen, what we hear is what we expect to hear. Our minds have a filter through which we experience life. I mentioned this during the October 10th service about listening with our filters. I mentioned filters of trauma, life experiences, ideologies. There are more that I didn't say. Our knowledge and culture can also create filters. So we have all seen a picture where the image either looks like two men staring at each other or it looks like a vase in the center. Thank you, Kevin. I hope you all can see that.
I'm having a hard problem.
Please Google it because this is going to drive the point.
I can't get it.
The drawing can be visually interpreted in two different ways. At first glance, depending on how your mind interprets the picture, you'll either see a vase or two faces. Some people also call it a candlestick. The mind will comfortably pick one or the other. When challenged to see the other picture, our minds must shift to a different perspective. This can be challenging, and I urge you to give it a try. There are many visual games that conceptualize two images, and the viewer will visually select one image in the picture. Kind of like the ear picture. I saw two embryos, also apple cord. It was supposed to just be 2 ears, right? The funny thing about our senses with our eyes, our sight, our perspective on what we hear and what we interpret plays the same way. Took you for a look, right? So in school, we're told by our teachers to pay attention, sit still and listen. But what does that really mean? Attention is often paid when something strikes our interest. But what in the world is listening? In the morning, we hear the calls of the blue jays beside our bedroom window, the sound of an ambulance siren speeding down the road, the sound of the Keurig steaming up the water for our coffees and our teas, the sound of the water running in the bathroom. We can hear all these things with our sense of sound just fine, but listening? Beth had mentioned in her reading, listening without reserve, without judgment, not to interrupt or to amuse, but to allow for one to speak entirely. To be in the present moment, rooted in our space, grounded in the room to receive. We allow our minds to be open to hearing and listening with our hearts open. It's funny how we're not taught how to listen in school, but we are prepared to memorize and move on. To learn to listen, we must imagine ourselves as children, trying to understand when the adults tell them to pay attention. Attention? The child will ask themselves, what in the world is that? And yet, with the confusion of the definition they personify as attention, along with a curiosity and willingness to comply to some level or degree of compliance, the child acknowledges that listening must first mean to look the adult right in the eyes so they can learn whatever this word means. Be careful not to stare too long with a child. Some cultures view the stare off as disrespect. As adults, it's not always easy to listen. We have myriads of experiences, lessons, triggers, choices, and so forth that we feel arise and yearn to resonate and relate to or disagree without fully listening to the degree of listening. Our ears are shaped like heart, and the heart has ears filled within. Lest we grow every day with a deeper understanding and functionality of what the sense of sound really is. Let us make conscious decisions to pause and listen so that we can hear what is being said. So as Beth shared for her new year, for my new year, I would like to learn how to listen better too. My way to begin to improve listening is to stop asking people to move their masks so I can hear them. That's the logic that I created in my mind. Thank you.
This is a great song by I am open and I am willing, for to be hopeless would seem so strange. It dishonors those who go before us, so lift me up to the light of change. I am open and I am willing, for to be hopeless would seem so strange. It dishonors those who go before us, so lift me up to the light of change. There is a hurting in my family, and there is sorrow in my town. There is a panic all across the nation, and there is wailing the whole world round. But I am open and I am willing, for to be hopeless would seem so strange. It dishonors those who go before us, so lift me up to the light of change. May the children see more clearly, and may the elders be more wise. May the winds of change caress us, even though they burn our eyes. I am open and I am willing, for to be hopeless would seem so strange. It dishonors those who go before us, so lift me up to the light of change. Give me a mighty oak to hold my confusion. Give me a desert to hold my fear. Give me a sunset to hold my wonder. Give me an ocean to hold my tears. I am open and I am willing, for to be hopeless would seem so strange. It dishonors those who go before us, so lift me up to the light of change. So lift me up to the light of change.
James. Thank you, Aaron. Beth, Janae, you're not the only ones working on listening better. I am also working on listening better. Beth, I am also a fixer, and I think it's a good idea to get that New Year's resolution. I think I will share it with you. And Janae, you talked about listening through filters, and one of my filters is this. I'm great at listening when it's something I want to hear. I am eager to hear the things I want to hear, not so good at listening that which I don't want to hear. I do have training in being a good listener. In 1984, I went to Cornell University and signed up to be a peer counselor in the EARS program. EARS stood for Empathy, Assistance, and Referral Service, EARS. I don't know if you could see the ears that Janae had as our special effects slide. I'm not sure that worked with our technology. But I participated in this training. It was a training in Rogerian active listening. Rogerian stood for Carl Rogers, the noted psychologist and founder of client-centered therapy. And we broke up into dyads and took turns talking and listening. We practiced reflective listening. So if I'm paired up with Beth and Beth says, I really like your homily, but your robe is terrible, I would say, Beth, it sounds like you're saying my clothing might be getting in the way of people listening to what I have to say, or something like that. We were trained to notice body language, to notice tone of voice, and it was very useful and became the basis for a lot of my career working in domestic violence and sexual violence prevention. And so I got to practice those techniques. And of course, ministry. I practice the techniques, but I do not use them consistently. So one example when I did not use it was a few years ago in my neighborhood in Maynard, Massachusetts. I was walking our dog, Lufa, and one of our neighbors was cutting a tree down. And I don't know if you've seen these arborist trucks with like the big claw out the back. So they were at the point where the tree was cut down and segmented into logs, and the claw was like putting the logs onto the truck. And I just chatted up my neighbor, found out the logs were not being kept by him. The arborist was just taking them away, and he had no use for them. And my neighbor said, do you want them? And I tend to jump at anything free, so I ran home with Lufa and Lucinda, who is watching live. Hi, honey. She was there, and I believe the conversation went something like this. Honey, our neighbor is giving away free logs. We have a fireplace. Is it okay if I have them bring the logs over here? And Lucinda, well, I don't know. Which neighbor? How thick are the logs? We only have a little chainsaw, a little plug-in chainsaw, and might not work if the logs are thick. I said, did I mention the logs were free? That this is free firewood? I mean, even if some of them, if we can cut them, shouldn't we just it's okay, right? Like, they can deliver the wood, right? Well, I don't know. I guess so. I just don't want logs to be lying in our yard for months. So the truck came over, the logs were unloaded, and the logs did not stay in our yard for months. They stayed there for years. It turns out our tiny little chainsaw only worked on like 1 or 2 out of the huge giant logs, and so exactly what she didn't want to have happen happened. I think this is what you're talking about, Janae, hearing versus listening. I was hearing her, but I wasn't listening. I wasn't valuing what she had to say in the glow of free firewood. And it's not that I had forgotten my Rogerian peer counseling training, nor had I forgotten my rape prevention training, which tells me that someone saying I guess so is not the same thing as someone saying yes. So why didn't I use those skills? I mean, I was having a conversation with a woman that I love more than anyone else in the world, a woman whose opinions and thoughts and very being mean everything to me. You would think that her words would be important to me. But in that moment, I cared more about the free wood than I did about listening to her. And the consequences of my bad listening were not especially terrible. We had logs in our yard for a couple of years. But that choice I made not to listen to her could have had far worse consequences in other situations. Back to Janae's concepts of filters for a moment. Unfortunately, I probably have a filter for gender. I wish I didn't, and I'm trying not to. But Dr. Deborah Tannen and many other feminist researchers consistently point out the research that men speak up far more than women in meetings and in public spaces. Author Darcy Reeder adds, when women and men are together, men talk more, but men think women talk more. In her book, Men Explain Things to Me, Rebecca Solnit says most women fight wars on two fronts. Solnit says one is for whatever the putative topic is. In this case, do we take the free wood or not? And the other, Solnit says, is simply for the right to speak, to be acknowledged, to have ideas, to be in possession of facts and truths, to have value, to be a human being. So in the long run, the price for me not listening denies Lucinda's existence, denies her value as a human being. And whose voices tend to get listened to in our country, in our culture, in our congregation, and whose voices get drowned out, go unheard? What are our filters when we try to listen? Our denomination, Unitarian Universalism, seeks to center the voices of marginalized people, especially those voices and leaders within our denomination. As young people say on the internet, we signal boost women's voices, indigenous voices, black voices, transgender voices. We signal boost young voices, lesbian, gay, bisexual voices, immigrant and refugee voices. In some ways, maybe we're trying to make up for lost time. Because until fairly recently, ordained ministers looked almost exclusively like me. Old, white, male, cisgender. Despite my time and education by so many intersectional feminists in my life, I think I didn't listen to Lucinda, partly because I've been socialized that my voice matters more than hers, that my voice matters more than people who don't look like me. I did listen to her one other time, though. Most of you know I'm from Boston, Massachusetts, and I was driving the car, she was a passenger. We were driving on Route 2 in the rotary near Fresh Pond. I'm looking at John and James, who probably know that rotary. And it's a fast rotary unless there's traffic, and it was fast right now. But I'm driving, talking to her. I see an opening. It's about a car length and a few inches, more than enough room. So I got the accelerator, make the merge. Done. My skilled driving is put to good use, and Lucinda did this. In the passenger seat, she kind of did this, and she said, "We're gonna die, we're gonna die." kind of curled up like a baby, like a frightened child. And it wasn't the first time this had happened, this phenomenon of her saying, we're going to die, or we're going to, being afraid when I drove. And I had heard her before, but I didn't listen. I kind of took it as an insult. Her being afraid, to me, implied that my driving was bad. But this time, for whatever reason, it got through to seeing her, the woman I love, scared, got through to me, and I listened. And we pulled over, and I cried like this. I cried a lot more than this. We were there for a minute or two, and I just said, I'm so sorry for scaring you with my driving, and then for belittling it in the past when you told me. A few weeks ago, some members of our congregation met with me to resolve a conflict that they had. And remembering my training from Cornell, I asked, I said, okay, let's not have one person speak, then the other speak. Let's have one person speak, and then the other person summarize what the first person said before we move on. It was really, really hard. It wasn't like in role plays about a road. This was substantive, painful disagreements. But they did it. They hung in. It was a thing of beauty. I could see the body language when one was listening, and like they couldn't just say, yeah, but what I think is this. They had to really listen, body, mind, and soul, and summarize the other person's perspective, which was not theirs, which is really antithetical to theirs. But they did it. They did it. And it's probably the proudest moment I've had since coming here to Florida in August, more than any worship service. And they cried at the end, felt heard, felt understood, hugged each other, stayed in relationship, stayed with one another, stayed in community. It was messy, it was exhausting, I cried too. But I would do it every day. I would do it over and over again. If any of you have a conflict, come to me. We will do this. Even though it's hard work, it's work worth doing. Janae told us that if we put our ears together, the shape becomes a heart. John and James sang so beautifully. When we tell our story from deep inside, when we listen with a loving mind, we hear our voices in each other's words, then our heart is a holy place. I chose the topic of listening this morning because I want to introduce the interim work that we're going to do as a congregation. I was hired as a contract minister, not an interim minister, but I've been asked to do interim work. And what this means is when you've had a minister for many years, like my predecessor was here for 7 years, you need a transition because it's a big difference between the previous minister and figuring out what you want as the next settled minister. The transition work begins with listening, specifically listening to this congregation's history, both my predecessor's ministry and all the ministers before him since 1929. It continues by defining who we are as a congregation, then what kinds of leadership we need, what vision we have for our future, and finally what steps we need to take to make that vision happen. The transition will be guided by myself, Beth, our worship associate, also Sabina von Allock, Michael Pohl, and Rebecca Wilson. And we will begin by listening and delving into our history. It'll be painful. It'll be fun. And we will not always agree. And this shouldn't really surprise anyone. Our denomination started when Unitarians disagreed about the Trinity, and Universalists disagreed about who should get to go to heaven. We famously, as Unitarian Universalists, do not have a creed. So we will not and do not agree on many things, but let's not let that keep us from loving each other. Let's not let that keep us from being in a covenant group together, attending worship together, working together. Let's not let that keep us from marching together at the Voting Rights March just a couple days ago, at the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Parade next Monday. And I hear there's a Reproductive Rights March on the 22nd. My love for you and my love for Lucinda is more important than my socialization as a cisgender white man. My respect for you and my respect for Lucinda leads me to value your words, your opinions, her words, and her opinions, even more than I value free firewood. Your colleagues that I met with, their respect and love for each other was more important than the conflict, such that they took the time and the energy to listen, to summarize, and strengthen their relationship. The work we are doing together is more important than agreeing on everything. So let us listen with our hearts. Let us disagree, but let us still understand those we disagree with. Still stay connected. When we tell a story from deep inside, and we listen with a loving mind, and we hear our voices in each other's words, and our heart is in a holy place. Amen. Blessed be.
Thank you, Reverend Ben. To keep our congregation thriving, let us remember our connection to one another. Let us not forget our contributions to support the means to those connections. If you are a newcomer here, please refrain from making a donation. This service is our gift to you, and your presence is a gift to us. The link to give is in the description box below your screen. You can also donate through the Banco Faith Engagement mobile app or on our website under the Giving tab at uustpete.org or by sending a check to the church office. Many thanks.
Thank you, Aaron. I leave you with the words of Holly Near, sung to us by John and James. May the children see more clearly. May the elders be more wise. May the winds of change caress us, even though it burns our eyes. Give me a mighty oak to hold my confusion. Give me a desert to hold my fears. Give me a sunset to hold my wonder. Give me an ocean to hold my tears. Amen. And blessed be. Following this worship service, all members of UU St. Pete are invited to our town hall meeting. The link will be put into the text chat. Thank you, Kelly. And I hope to see you there. Now, feel free to follow along with the hand gestures as I extinguish our chalice. The words to UUSP's traditional chalice extinguishing might also be in the text chat. The text chat's getting a bit crowded. They're not going to be in the text chat. So just follow along with me, or as you know them. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of love, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts and out into the world. Go in peace.